So I think the growth is done for IT services. If you look at the US S&P 500, there are 7 stocks that have given some crazy returns. They are not new age tech. This is your client dependency. Consumer, BFSI, manufacturing, healthcare. These are all old economy businesses. $22 billion in dividend. This is the same amount of money that OpenAI has raised. Like imagine अगर ये पैसा तुम dividend देने से अच्छा invest करो शायद तुम OpenAI बना दो.
Oh wow! Founder is indispensable for the most part. Senior team members, when they get feedback, there are existential questions also. Does this mean that I will not get promoted? Does this mean I will be irrelevant tomorrow?
I think good businesses in their scale-up zone always create swim lanes, which are very, very clear. And people who can swim the fastest or the best or the longest in those swim lanes will do well.
Hello everyone, welcome to episode 38 of the Asymmetric podcast. Today is one of those episodes where Revant, Chirag and I actually join each other without a guest. So this will be a lot more free-flowing. And also this is board meeting season. Last week of, April, July, October and January is usually board meetings. So all three of us have either gone through or are going to go through board meetings. So there will be a lot of reflection on the board meetings. There was, of course, the announcement of the layoff of 12,000 mid to senior management folks at TCS, and what that reflects in terms of not only the organization and one of the crown jewels of Indian public markets, but also overall 20-25% of India's exports and 20-25% of India's public markets from an industry standpoint also. So hugely critical macro indicators on that front. That's a topic we'll go through. I think there are a few more topics that we may defer to next week, given our reflections on our board meetings and our organizations kind of took a lot longer. But welcome to episode 38, and I hope you enjoyed today. And please keep feedback coming in. We've seen a significant amount of engagement, especially over the last 3-4 episodes with Adi and Arjun. Comments are really entertaining, also in part feedbacky, in part, and mostly very, very reflective. So keep them coming. Please share this with people, especially founders in your circles who you think might derive value from these discussions, and keep the feedback coming, and I hope you enjoy.
Obviously, this was a big news, right? This week that TCS laid off 2% of global workforce. While there was a company statement, broadly there is the employee chatter is that if you count the number of people on bench and the fact that they have said the people at risk are folks who have been on bench for more than 3 months will also start coming into this fold. They believe it's going to be much more than 2%. So this number of 12,000 may increase to, by the end of the year, the guidance may become that we have laid off 20, 25 or even more, right? Now, this is all conjecture, but we'll see where it goes.
12,000 means there are 6 lakh people
Yeah.
employed, and you are saying that number can go up to 5%.
Yeah. It's been done in a compassionate way. There's 3-month, as a large global company, there's a decent payout, making sure it's largely at the mid and senior level. They're not doing it at the junior level because that's where the bulk of the cost lies, right? In terms of absolute value. But I like this commentary that they're saying it's not because of AI. This is where there's a skill mismatch. They're just saying there's a skill mismatch. I think there's a broader problem.
Yeah, that's crazy. This is now happening in general across the board. Middle management relevance to organizations is now becoming a lot because of span of control.
Yeah.
Are you saying
that just manage 20
is increasing
significantly? वही तो था ना अपन ने, I think 2-3-4 episodes back where we have seen that Uber, for example, is now going from 5 or 7 people manage span to almost 18 people span at the senior levels. You don't need so many layers anymore.
Yeah.
We are not
And
seeing efficiency increase in junior levels because of AI, but also increase in span. So then the efficiency gains are across.
Manager productivity also goes up, no? If you can use AI, then you can manage more people because you're able to distill. You don't have to go through a pre-read for 1 hour. You can put it in AI, look at the key points. It can go back to your master prompt and say, Acha, this was the problem. Or you can, again, my minutes of meeting have become so...
No, but Revant, is this got to do with lesser contracts coming in, contracts not getting written?
Correct. So we'll come there.
Proactive efficiency gains.
No, I'll tell you, my view is a little different. Let's see, in the end, there is always something people say, and then we have to read between the lines and figure out what is really happening, right? So this is the first clear problem. Apart from the COVID 16% revenue year growth, TCS has been a sub 10% revenue growth for the more than a decade now, right? So the revenue growth has not been more than 10%. And the last 4 years have been absolutely clobbered, and 2025 so looks like a zero growth year. And Why is this? Because I don't think new contracts were coming in over the last decade. So the number of new contracts being signed by people saying, okay, we will outsource our IT services to India. Here's $100 million over 5 years. Those contracts started diminishing significantly in the last decade. But what has started happening now is a lot of, and these are all 5-year contracts. So you will not see a big change till the contract comes up for renewal. And I think the number of contracts that are not being renewed now is a non-trivial number for all IT services companies. And my read as to why that is happening is essentially this chart, which is what is the actual dependence of revenue for all these guys. So they are all 80% plus dependent on North America plus Europe. All their clients are North America, Europe. 80-90% in some cases are North America, Europe. And these are not Mag 7. These are not Meta or Google or... And if you see the... this is a chart that I think keeps doing its round on Twitter, that if you look at the US S&P 500, there are 7 stocks that have given some crazy returns. But in the last 20 years, the returns of the S&P 500 are like sub 10%. And these are stock returns. So if you look at their EPS growth is even lower, revenue growth is even lower. So if all your clients are US and Europe, their growth is like sub 10%, they're at 5% growth, they are struggling. The shareholders will then ask them, ki, bhai, tum kar kya rahe ho, right? Where is the revenue growth or where is the margin growth? So it's a matter of time before people start saying that, okay, guys, we have reached the limit of our growth. We are now going to be a 10% growth company. Let's see where we can bring more efficiencies. And the first place to bring efficiency is look at a $100 million, $200 million contract and say, does this need to be $50 million? Wow. So in my view, this is this singular dependency that these guys have built. And this is a very macro view I have, that and look at the GDP, right? GDP growth of US is 2-3%. Europe तो is like negative growth.
Yeah.
Flat or negative. GDP देखो grow नहीं हो रहा है. उसमें तुम्हारे जो clients हैं, they are not new age tech, right? This is your client dependency. Consumer, BFSI, manufacturing, healthcare. These are all old economy businesses in an economy that is growing 0 to 2%. Those companies are not growing. It's a matter of time before they will start saying that, oh, why are we paying $200 million or $300 million to a Infosys or a TCS when this can be done in half the price? It absolutely is. Look at this revenue growth. No? I'm telling you, 2025, most likely 2026 will be negative growth. So I think the growth is done for IT services. No. Like we are going to be sub 5% growth for most of these businesses. So unless they figure out India.
Just comparing, TCS was 21 billion revenue and now it has gone to 30. If I look at that for Infosys now, Infosys March 2020 year was 90,000 crores of revenue. It has become 1,62,000 in 25. So I think TCS is growing much slower.
I don't know किसकी dependency क्या है, but इनका तो clearly dependence, मतलब मुझे तो ये बहुत scary लगता है. Maybe Infosys is a little bit more, I don't know, but North America being 58%, I don't know what is the client breakup. Is it more? Also look at the other aspect. No, H1Bs are being contested. Ki bhai kyun chahiye? There is also a broad Trump focus saying don't outsource to India. So just too many headwinds now for the industry. Broadly, see, there is also an internal view that people are not upskilled. You're not invested in AI. Like there's this very famous, Vishal Sikka got Infosys to invest in OpenAI in 2015-16, right? Like, I don't know if you know, $100 million because he believed in AI and he said, boss, we should. But then the guy was let go because he was maybe too cavalier or he was too aggressive because he believed that is the future and maybe Infosys wanted to be the steady ship IT services company. So there's no innovation that has happened. There's no upskilling that has happened. Your markets are not growing.
OpenAI in 2015, is it?
I think so. He was one of the first, the seed investor. Either Vishal or Infosys. One of
crazy.
them.
Very interesting. But I think Infosys, amongst others, has had a kind of advantage when it comes to digital services and so on, definitely compared to TCS with Horowitz. Yeah.
So Vishal invested. Yeah, he not Infosys. He personally invested in OpenAI.
They had the right guy at the top.
At least who believed in the future and said this is what the future will look like. Who had access, who had the network with the Silicon Valley, people who were thinking 10 years ahead, right? Kahan jayegi dunia karke. Our leadership today is, at least in these companies, it's a cash cow, right? And there's also a separate thing about TCS, right? That it's the biggest cash cow for Tata Sons, which is a philanthropic trust, which does a lot of great things, right? Like Tata Sons the amount of philanthropy that is done is spectacular. Even today, if I look at the Tata Memorial Hospital and the amount of free treatment or the subsidized treatment for cancer patients, not just in Bombay, now they have like multiple centers all over India. There's a bunch of stuff done, but yeah, the cash cow is largely this. In between, kabhi Tata Motors gives up a decent dividend. Sometimes Tata Steel does well, but it's been on and off. TCS has been the cash cow, 70-80% of market cap for the longest amount of time for Tata Sons, right? So I don't think the incentives are finally aligned to say कि यार disruption करते हैं and reinvent करते हैं करके. And all of these promoters have moved on. These are all professionally managed companies now.
Very interesting. Very interesting.
You know, the bigger worry for me is IT services forms like, I think, 20-25% of our Nifty index. If you take and the market index is a weighted average market on weighted average market cap, right? So it's a very significant portion. At some point of time, it will start getting re-rated to not depend on IT services as such.
Wow.
See, this is the big problem I see. What is the highest growth market today in the world? India. And 2-3% of your revenue is dependent on India. So, like, where is the 100 million contract from an Axis Bank to a TCS? यार, I think एक बार वो dependency आ गई ना कि डॉलर में कमाओ और INR में खर्च करो, वो लेबर आर्बिट्राज पे बहुत ज्यादा वो कल्चर में चढ़ गया है वो. There's an interesting tweet. TCS has given $22 billion in dividend since listing. $22 billion. This is the same amount of money that OpenAI has raised to create AGI or whatever, rule the entire AI. Like imagine अगर ये पैसा तुम dividend देने से अच्छा invest करो, शायद तुम OpenAI बना लेते.
Oh wow. Bhai, did you guys see? Marathi Manus has become the global CEO of Procter and Gamble, yaar.
Yeah.
I saw your post.
Big deal, yaar. It's a big deal. P&G is like, I know we have kind of conquered tech and IT and all of that. Starbucks and Indra Nui and Lakshman were different. But what Procter and Gamble is like, boss, it's a white man's firm, yaar.
अच्छा,
Out and out.
ऐसा है क्या?
Out and out, yaar. Out and out. $42 billion of P&G revenue come from the US. Out of 85 billion. Half is US.
Half. But Unilever भी ऐसे ही होगा ना?
No. Actually, it's a big part of Unilever. Actually, I think 15-20% of Unilever.
नहीं इतना नहीं होगा देखते.
हाँ. Market cap पे तो होगा. Unilever also Dutch ना. Dutch company तो थोड़ा European है.
अच्छा.
थोड़ा American है. थोड़ा India. HUL is very strong. P&G is $42 billion just US. Out of 85 billion. So also thing is ना, most like Sundar for example, यहाँ पे पढ़ के फिर वहाँ जाके MBA किया. Indra Nooyi also वहाँ जाके second MBA किया. IIM Calcutta फिर उधर जाके Booth से one of these places.
This is the first guy who's out and out only Indian
IIM
studied.
Lucknow and then 36 years career, yaar.
Unilever overall is 60 billion euros. HUL is 6.7 billion. So 11%.
11%. Pretty big. But big deal, yaar. See, he has to get everything right. You only have a 35-year career in an organization where promotions happen only every 3-4 years. Right? So you have 10 to 12 shots to get to the corner office. After a point, now people just laterally move here and there. It becomes very difficult. So I'm assuming you take a role between category and geography and keep making big jumps. And you have to each jump has to be meaningful enough. You see, I was reading up about the guy, right? I think of course performance is off the chart, but वो वैसे बहुत लोग होते हैं who deliver great numbers. I think with him, he actually started creating a lot of followership in the firm. Like people would just, if he would change roles, like the 100 people below him would kind of follow him or want to follow him. So suddenly there's a mobilization of talent that he was able to create, which I think is what differentiated him from other high performers whom you had every year.
Shantanu, we have discussed this. I don't know, me and Chirag keep discussing this. I have just boiled this down to every manager or leader who comes to me and says, I want to grow. I keep telling them your number one skill set has to be to generate followership with talent. To talent magnet where to attract कर, develop कर, जो करना है कर. टैलेंट तेरे साथ काम करेगा, तेरे को जितना प्रमोशन चाहिए, जो रोल चाहिए, एक ही रह जाता है यार आफ्टर अ व्हाइल. It's just one and only one thing.
If you are able to attract now, then people will make you redundant. You will have more bandwidth to grow.
Crazy leverage, yaar. Great talent. People, I think everyone knows this theoretically, okay? I think very few people actually experience it. Because it's easy to say.
Do you think they invest time with their teams? Like I'll tell you, I keep seeing the reverse. I keep seeing not achieve their full potential. I see this a lot now because 16 years I have worked with so many people. And then again, the reverse is also true. Every talented person who I have seen get limited at a certain position or not being able to achieve more than what they were doing in the past has also been because of that their ability to develop talent or hire great talent, then delegate, etc., becomes a big challenge. And you're right, theoretically they know it, but when I ask them कि आप ये क्यों नहीं कर पा रहे हो, at least I have seen two broad problems. One of the biggest ones that I see is lack of empathy. Or I think empathy is too soft a word. EQ. Let's say EQ is a more corporate understanding of like, and you can't develop EQ very easily. You're either there by nature, or you have to nurture your own self-awareness and accept and say, okay, I need to develop this and work at it. And it's very hard. It's very hard and it takes a lot of time. Actually, more than hard, it takes time. And it needs a lot of patience. It's like going to the gym. Every day, you are not seeing any gains, but tum ja rahe ho, tum kar rahe ho. And it happens maybe after 3-4 years that there's no measurement for it. Actually, दूसरा दिक्कत ये है ना अपने corporate में कि everyone wants to measure कि अच्छा, am I moving or not? Am I moving or not? Right? You can't see EQ. You need to keep getting feedback. And the feedback will not be every month. People will see it over a quarter or maybe 6 months and say, yeah, we are seeing that you're putting some effort, you're doing better than before. But the bar is not clear. It's very hazy. So one is EQ. The other is, I just think, common sense of spending time and investing in people. That it's a job. Forget not having EQ. Just have the basic courtesy that as a manager or as a leader, your number one job is to first make your people successful. Right? Somehow that's also missing in like most common thing I see from young kids is my manager doesn't give me time. I'm like, yeah, how can you not give your team time? That is a number, like crime or crime. Right? You have to be available for your team at all points of time. So
It's an important but not urgent part of the bucket. Na? Spending time with the team without agenda or without work is always important but not urgent. So you always think my view now, Revant, on this is actually revolved over a period of time is you tend to project to your people around you and compensate for things that you did not get. For example, if you were born to a family where parents did not kind of give you the attention you needed growing up, you will become an overcompensatory parent in all likelihood. So people who are managers growing up the ranks will start overcompensating for things they did not get. I also feel like people confuse, and I think as maturity and growth happens, initially your view of people management as you're a young manager is around popularity, being liked. People confuse followership with being a nice person or doing things or kind of being a bend over and so on, right? So there are a lot of even senior folks I see who are very people pleasing or team pleasing without like compromising for company outcomes, for example. Right? That's the stage one. Stage two is where they start becoming a lot more empathetic. So popularity becomes replaced with empathy. And at some stage, empathy also becomes extremely dangerous. If you're over empathetic, then it stops you from being a real leader. And I think the big delta that I think a lot of people, including me, struggle with is going from empathy to compassion. And it's a very it's a very clear distinction. Like empathetic leaders are actually roadblocks to organizations.
Say more
Because
about this. Say more, give examples.
to making the other person's problems or making the other like it is not my job as your manager to be in your shoes. It might be my job to understand it once in a while, and that should be one of the many inputs into my decision or into my approach. But compassion is more important. You're a human being. Here are your variables. Here is what is the bigger picture, and then we should take a call which is slightly more dispassionate, objective, and having your good also as kind of baked in. And I think that's the one shift I see really good leaders make very well. They can be brutal when it comes down to it. And you'll feel like, in some situations they're extraordinarily compassionate and, kind of for the other person. But many times they take calls that are unpopular and so on. So I think compassion is most important.
actually, interestingly, I got this feedback recently. So I do a yearly. It's a tough job because founders, CEOs don't get brutal feedback, right? Like we are like the venture ecosystem is very well known for being very founder friendly, right? And at the extreme end, you have governance issues. At the other extreme end, things are all hunky dory because founders are in the arena every day fighting the battles, and therefore there's a lot of empathy and founder friendly firstness, if I can call it. But when you get past PMF, right, the broader question that I keep asking is there should be feedback loops, right, to just build self awareness. So my recent yearly review, I got feedback that empathy is a very small part of overall EQ. So in when you need to have very high EQ as a leader, which you do. That this was feedback for me. You're building more self-awareness. You are trying to regulate and manage your emotions, though I'm not the best at it. You are motivated to achieve goals, and you have empathy to understand others' feelings, and you have social skills. So there's a very high EQ bar that I have, which is great. The two places I need to work on is manage my own emotions. I should, as the company grows larger, learn to manage them. But more critically, they said you are over-indexed on empathy. So to your point, Shantanu, the feedback that I got was that overall in EQ, if you over-index on empathy, you will not, exactly what you said, that you will not be a great leader because you now have to learn to be more objective. You're not holding hands and trying to cross the river. कि यार क्या बनेगा कल पता नहीं है. But if the company is now at a certain scale, there's a lot more objective first principle frameworks that can be used to grow the business from here. You don't need to like every day is not a battle कि यार कल लौट के नहीं आएंगे करके types, right? So the paths become a lot more objective. Maybe there is still 20% एकदम 0 to 1 कुछ करना है, but most teams need to have a clear jobs to be done framework. You know, you can hire for that. The talent is available to take the company in the 1 to 10 zone. Empathy is a big problem in there because a lot of the leadership that you develop in the 0 to 1 stage, they are not skilled labor. They just come in as generalists who are trying to say that, you know, let's win this battle and let's build a great company. But as you start needing specialists, the generalists need to understand that now they need to be a specialist role. And empathy is what stops the leader giving that feedback. That boss, you now have to be a specialist, right? So it's an interesting point that I always mixed up EQ and empathy, and then when I got this feedback, I went and read properly कि यार EQ के क्या 4-5 component है, empathy is one part of them, and we generally oscillate between over-indexing on one or the other. So while it's very good to have self-awareness, keep that as the highest. Have a very high social skills framework because as a leader, you need to interact effectively with others. Be very motivated to achieve your goals. But what is also important and very hard for me, at least, is self-regulation. And at least the feedback I have got is I'm very high on empathy. I mean, maybe need to regulate that a little bit.
And especially, I think more so, specialist का bar जो है ना, I think is going up. With AI coming in, I think specialists have to become like even 99% specialists now. Because otherwise, most of this generalist work is being done by AI. And do you think then the need for empathy, compassion goes up even more?
Like pushing my current team to become AI first and empathizing कि यार 15 साल से या 10 साल से या 5 साल से जो भी किसी का career रहा है, they have not been able to think AI first. So I should be empathetic to their situation, and there's almost I need a lot of to do work to be done. दिन में उतना ही टाइम है, कैसे टाइम निकालेंगे सीखने के लिए कि AI से versus getting a 22-year-old who has not seen any other way and whose default day zero status ki can this be done with AI, right? The brutally objective CEO has to say, yeah, let me start getting these 22-year-olds and see if we can reimagine the way marketing is done or ops is done or tech is done and so on and so forth. The empathetic leader would say कि यार give them time. It's not fair, right? तुम कौन सा खुद इतना ये adopt कर चुके हो? Like तुम भी तो बहुत slowly जा रहे हो because you also have some limited time in the day. And I don't know, it's a very hard question for me to answer.
And
Yeah.
that's also true, Revant. I think this wave is secular, no doubt, but I don't think so. Things are changing in a month, right? So one can take time, get used to this. You know, there is no need for a knee-jerk reaction or a urgent move कि यार आज करना है. I think this can be a slow, gradual change which can happen. Correct.
I also like what Adi said, right? I think Adi said that the organization you build, the culture is basically a collection of incentives. Is the incentives you reward, incentives for the behavior you reward is creates the culture. It's not anything beyond that, right? So I think eventually, as founders, I think one of the things that I've tried to realize is that everyone is different. And to your point, Revant, I think regulate emotions is yes, but your emotion is what makes Mosaic what it is. So my one pinch of salt on this feedback would be regulate when it becomes erosive, which in my view, having known you for 10 years, I think would be 1 in 20 times. Baki 19 times it is what makes your company what it is. So don't regulate it. This is all therapies that comes our way to kind of make us more agreeable to people who find it hard to be around and kind of so on. So
Yeah. But इसमें ना एक, I'll do the nuance. I agree with you, right? The nuance I would say is, I like the way the feedback was given. कि when your company is 100 crore, your words as a CEO do matter. But when it becomes 1,000 crore, your words are heavier and they matter a lot more.
Yeah.
And therefore, you have to measure the weight of the word and then So
for
the
sure.
regulation of emotions is more a ask, because the size of the company is such that it starts becoming meaningful for all shareholders. And if you go back to the fiduciary responsibility of the CEO, it is to give the highest risk-adjusted returns to all shareholders. And therefore, first principle common sense would say that, and that's why I actually use this word. If you remember in the podcast before, I had said share price is the okay, and I actually changed that to risk-adjusted share price. It's a very interesting nuance. You can increase the share price by getting higher profit, or you can also increase it by reducing risk. So that's a nuance I have never actually factored in my life. Like for 42 years, I have never conceptualized risk. Like there's zero risk. क्या हो जाएगा बस क्या हो जाएगा बस. So I was always the 0 to 1 guy, right? कि भाई क्या ही हो जाएगा, because it's 0 or it's 1. There is no, it's fully black and white life, right? But I think the interesting push that comes, because I said that now I'll think like a CEO and not like a founder. So then you drop the emotional state, you start becoming more objective. So then the feedback also becomes more objective. And I realized that people don't like risk after a certain size and scale. And it may also be a function of the stage of the company, or the way what is the state of the cap table, what is the state of the markets, etc. For example, a public market investor would always want the highest returns, but fully risk adjusted, right? Like they'll be like, "Bhai, दुनिया का risk मत ले, but 25% दे दे करके." Whereas a VC would say that, if you're not going for 50x, then what is the point? So, but when we move from spectrum to spectrum, as the company keeps scaling, then the expected becomes more and more risk adjusted return, and therefore risk profile
Absolutely
changes for 0 to 1 bets, risk profile changes for kind of acquisitions you'll think of, risk profile changes for how much capital you will put at risk for a new project, risk profile changes for the talent that you would want to onboard, right? Because it becomes easier and easier over time. Once the business starts taking shape, it's easier to take a bet on someone who's been there, done that. Like, for example, if you want to hire someone for Amazon, you will now hire from a talent pool that says that, yeah, isko Amazon bahut अच्छे से आता है, because you can now afford as a 400-500 crore revenue company to hire the best, like the top 10 people on Amazon, because they would want to work for a 500 crore company going to a 1,000 crore company, right?
Yeah.
Whereas when you are 100 crores, you may not have access to you may have access, but they may not join you, because either you can't pay, or they don't have the motivation to say कि यार 100 crore से कितना ही हो जाएगा, 300 crore हो जाएगा. They may not have the vision and motivation. Whereas what we hired was people who believed that नहीं यार ये 100 crore का Bombay shaving company 1,000 crore बनेगा करके एक दिन, right? So that intrinsic motivation is more EQ, is where I think your early hires will come in. But then over time, I think, going back to Chirag's point, specialists who have to be 99th percentile in their respective, I don't know. Yeah, it's a tough journey. I keep questioning how much specialization, like the missionary versus mercenary framework. Like there are too many different frameworks in which you will have to figure out how to build that team out.
All of this actually comes down to like this will affect you on every decision, right? So the cascading of decisions becomes critical, right? So for example, today छोटी सी चीज है, right? So for example, today we have a middle management rung that has CM2 targets. They don't have EBITDA targets. Now, because they have CM2 targets, their hiring is not something that they think about from a P&L standpoint. They don't have a ROI view on hiring. They're like, मेरे को लोग चाहिए, काम है, लोग चाहिए, right? And then it goes to Deepak, and Deepak is like, intern free में ले लो. I cannot give you more budget on this. This is what it is. Now, the cascading impact on this is that over a period of time, people start feeling that Bombay Shaving Company is a place where you can work, where work is great, but they don't value you. Founder goes on podcast and waxes eloquent on, creating value, but internship free में करा रहे. So now, long-term perception becomes hugely erosive, right? And hence you have to take some of these calls. This is like one of 1,000 decisions that probably you're taking on at a monthly level. So वो becomes critical, because I always wonder, end state सबके लिए अलग है. आपके लिए तो end state है ही नहीं. There is no end state for the founder, right? Unless you sell and leave, which is, I think, 1 in 10 chance or whatever. But if you're building for decades, then आपके लिए कोई end state नहीं है. सबके end state अलग-अलग है. And the company's metrics have to be so that all these end states are kind of balanced in some equilibrium. My only point, Revant, to your thing is, as you get bigger, and I love this phrasing which Toshan had, which is the bigger you get, the louder the scream of a CEO's whisper. So your whisper becomes a scream, right? And the scream gets louder as you become bigger. So, but that does not mean that you regulate emotions. That just means that the articulation and audience of that emotion should be very thoughtfully done. But you should feel it, because we don't want to robotize founders. into feeling less than what they should, because that is the most like that. वही तो है ना यार passion. वही तो है passion. वही तो है, that's the fuel that will take you for 50 years. If
Yeah.
you're
No,
not
no, I don't
regulating
disagree.
that,
Yeah.
only
But
you.
thoda,
Because
thoda apna, like for example, think about it, right? Like the amount of, you're a passionate individual, right? But when you talk about anything passionately and uh, you may have figured out a way to develop a thick skin to not let, let's say, the online trolling affect you. But at some point of time, it does start affecting people around you as well, right? And at least your parents, your immediate board members and stuff like that, they'll get it. But how it impacts every single employee of Bombay Shaving Company, you will not know, right?
correct.
So थोड़ा बहुत वो onus ना आ जाता है वो. People always look to you for guidance, for leadership, for capital raising, capital allocation, hiring the best talent, inspiring more people to join, inspiring, let's say, a channel partner like Blinkit to work with you closely and give you lesser margins than others because they love you and whatever it is, right? But in the end, that's the trade-off, right? Passion always has the two sides. There'll be
100%.
the
100%. So there is a regulation of the articulation. So for example, to give you an example, there is significant feedback to me that I need to have more neutral points of view, especially in public, and it's a very valid feedback, because so sometimes the extreme ends of these articulations become problematic. So then you have to kind of become a lot more measured in your words. It's like if you were to take a super extreme example, if a Pahalgam attack happens, what happens to the Prime Minister of the country from an emotional standpoint is extreme, but his statement is extremely measured. However, he is feeling the state, because it affects like 140 crore people, right? So I think that's the nuance. You should feel it, because if you don't feel it, you don't take the right calls. If you start regulating what you feel itself, with the fear that what I'm going to articulate is going to reflect something extreme, then you will start taking lesser and lesser CEO calls or founder calls. I think you should feel it, but then really, really kind of temper the articulation very thoughtfully. That's the trick, I think. But if you
yeah.
stop feeling it now,
Yeah, no, I don't think the ask is to stop feeling it. The ask is to not immediately say what's on your mind, because
yeah.
that
So
I think people feel a lot more hurt than they did before. Like when you're a
yeah,
small
which is very
company, people don't feel it
yeah.
that much. But when you're a larger company, people are like, yaar, aisa kyun bol diya karke, the types.
I don't want anyone telling founders to regulate their emotions, because that is just not.
Yeah, no, I don't think that's the ask. I don't
Uh,
think that's the ask. The ask is, actually, it's very weird. Like my team always told me that we always knew where you stood with us because आपके मुंह पे दिख जाता है. I'm like, great, अच्छी बात है. Like life is so simple, right? Everyone knows where they stand. Are they screwing up? Are they doing a good job? Like I never had to say good job. People would know that, हाँ यार, Revant तो बोल रहा है कि अच्छा काम कर रहा है, because it's very clear where I would spend time, where I would say that यार और ये solve करते हैं, who I would give more work and stuff like that. But over time, that starts becoming too much of a signal as the org grows, because people are like, ki, yaar, how do we get into this group? And so I think, Chirag, you had this wonderful article you had shared to me that founders don't realize when their behavior actually becomes politics. I don't remember the exact article. Can you pull that up? It was an amazing article, Shantanu. You should also read it. Like I was like, oh my god, like this is so
Yeah, it
right.
is.
Because as an org grows, if you don't measure your, as you said, you feel the emotion, but how you react to it, you need to start being a little bit more objective with it, because people start reading into these cues and start feeling things that you may not even intend for them to feel. Right? So it's an
Yeah.
interesting.
How do you manage that, by the way? I know we have a bunch of topics to cover, but I know Revant, you and I have discussed it. Chirag, I'm sure also experiences it, even though I'm not sure he has discussed. We've discussed it in as much depth. But do you see, like, one of the things with founders is you have to create strong leaders and followership in strong leaders, who then go on to create more followership, right? One of the flip sides of strong followership is that sometimes you create alphas in the leadership team who may not see eye to eye with each other, and then you have to kind of dissonant uh, followership situations. And a lot of times people have to like kind of align with this general or this general or this general, and they're all powerful, high performing folks. So then suddenly, how do you get, do you encourage it? Recognize that this is the function of like a 200 people org, that you will have, kind of dissonant people. And as long as company that gets done, it's good competition. Or do you feel like it's risky, and it almost creates camps and multiple union type situations with, there's no right answer on these things. So people have
Actually,
different
I
opinions.
tell you, I have a very strong view in this because I've seen this and I'm trying to address this by calling it out head on. Is anybody who's reporting to me directly, I have realized at least direct people who report to me cannot play status games. And I realized the biggest delta is you can identify who's playing a status game and who's playing a wealth game. For example, the two things that I see that breed this behavior is insecurity. Ki, do I have the highest amount of power, or do I have a PNL that will get more budget than somebody else's PNL and stuff like that? Again, hiring budget, for example, right? People actually equate कि इसका team इतना बड़ा है, मेरा team इतना छोटा क्यों है? Like these are very status games kind of behaviors, right? Then I see insecurity behavior. कि यार आपने मेरे को email पे you didn't involve me in this meeting. I'm like, yeah, I'm not thinking about this half the time कि अच्छा मैं किस को meeting में mark कर.
Designation asks, do you put that as a status game? I want to be
100%.
CXO,
Designation
I want to be
asks,
SVP, whatever.
not being marked on emails, talking to an L-2 directly without telling me that you are talking to my team. I know I'm not regulating my emotions right now. So yeah, they're
good. I'm glad. That's the feedback I want. No, I completely agree. Completely agree.
This was the article we were talking about how to minimize politics in your company.
Good examples that they have given.
Yeah, I think I like the most interesting part was this. That अभी हम promotions की बात कर रहे थे ना. Every time your company gives someone a promotion, everyone else at the person level evaluates the promotion, judges whether this was right or not. If the latter, then the other employees generally react in three ways. They sulk and feel undervalued. They outward disagree. They attempt to copy the political behavior.
वो तो three था.
So ये सब बहुत होता है ना. अभी हम बात कर रहे थे.
ये बहुत होता है अभी. He said ये बहुत होता है.
So he's saying that as founders, you shouldn't even engage in this because
100%.
Be very careful about how you listen and the message it sends. Simply by hearing, also people say, "Oh, that Chirag agreed to this." Sometimes I feel that at least मैं तो थोड़ा inert होता जा रहा हूँ अभी on these noises. अभी बीच में मैं एक महीना दिल्ली नहीं आया तो I started to hear that Chirag doesn't love Delhi office, Delhi folks, so this office is going to get shut. And then suddenly we have a new full floor in Delhi. So I don't know how to respond. अभी मैं 3 बार दिल्ली आ गया हूँ last 4 weeks में, so I don't know how Bangalore folks are feeling.
Bangalore folks are भाई हम तो गए. चिराग is happy with us.
वापस shift
I'm telling you, पक्का वहाँ चाय वाय पे चर्चा हो रही होगी कि यार चिराग आजकल ऑफिस में नहीं बहुत दिल्ली जा रहा है. पक्का ना मतलब I think दिल्ली वालों का अच्छा प्रमोशन हुआ है.
Good है. Founder signals through behavior, even very, very subtle subconscious behavior, I think are picked up. Yeah, organization becomes large, you become lesser and lesser approachable, how much ever you want to be. थोड़ा हमारे case में there is also like this bunch of young people want to take selfies also. So that creates more distance with the person. Like I like it, frankly. I feel it's a good thing. But beyond the point, you will lead to a lot more conversations. Also, like people have people's viewing of decision is so weird. So, for example, हमारे ऑफिस में there's a football table होता है 2-2 घंटे बच्चे खेलते हैं loudly. वहाँ पे टीम बैठती है. Someone must have complained, boss, this is too loud. So now the HR could have said, you only can play in these slots, 1 to 2 p.m. or 5 to 7 p.m. or whatever. So back time you cannot play or play quietly or do some more. Football table is gone. Table itself is gone. So now people are like, हमारा Bombay Shaving Company का tagline है खुल के खेल. हमारा culture है limitless aggression. और football table चला गया. Actually, this is the
I love this when people frame the argument conveniently to suit their,
We are against the culture क्योंकि हमने football table हटा. I said, boss, एक second. First of all. फुटबॉल टेबल का कोई यहाँ पे जरूरत नहीं है. अगर किसी को खेलना है, let people go and play. There are sports games, cricket, football, etc. There are enough teams. We sponsor it. That's the extent of it. खुल के खेलना.
And उनको फोकस ब्रांड फ्लॉवर्स लीग में स्पॉन्सर करके भेजते हैं. खुल के खेलो.
तो यही है मतलब people's views on things, etc. becomes very important. And the way they articulate it is. But frankly, they're also feeling it. No? End of the day, you cannot invalidate what someone feels. They feel it, so it's right. You have to be very careful about how you articulate and what your expectations are.
I don't think you should. मैं तो actually realize कर रहा हूँ कि अभी ये HR सब कुछ HR देखेगा भाई मेरा HR का डोमेन है HR बताएगा कर. That's why you have to drop the founder tag, Shantanu. It will be emotional. Like maybe you should talk to Mr. Jejurikar and ask, invite him on the pod. पूछते यार आपने 30 साल कैसे PNG में talent develop किया ताकि talent followed you where you avoided all of these pitfalls that we seem to be getting. But I would argue that it's a process oriented business. Yeah.
और PNG में there is not much variable ना. The rules are so clear. You have to play to those rules. So the people who play, because he doesn't have to worry about football table आएगा नहीं आएगा. I don't think Shailesh ever has had to worry about.
That's the learning, na Shantanu. Maybe we should have ground rules that set the culture for the year and go back to the Amazon leadership principles. Or I think good businesses in their scale up zone always create swim lanes which are very, very clear, and people who can swim the fastest or the best or the longest in those swim lanes will do well. I think maybe
नहीं but
our
क्या है
job
ना पता
becomes
है
more of defining those swim lanes versus trying to get into
नहीं
these.
नहीं
Our
no
job
I'll
is
tell
not
you what the
solution.
issue is. No, I'll tell you the issue. The issue is we want people to take risks and do crazy things also, right? In 0 to 1 journeys or more 0 to 1 journeys. And then when we make rules around it, it is not taken well. So what I've realized is, for example, people kept complaining about indiscipline of younger talent, okay? कि late
Hmm.
the moment you put like an HR system which tells कि you punched in out of 22 days, you punched in after 11 a.m. on these 9 days. The same team is coming back. I said, you are the one who was complaining about indiscipline. Now, when your team has been shown the mirror, you are now saying, कि नहीं, इसको, how do you want us to word it? Do you want us to sugarcoat? तुम आधे टाइम लेट आते हो. How do you sugarcoat something like this to a 23-year-old young employee? बताओ. तो तुमको डिसिप्लिन भी चाहिए लेकिन तुमको बताना भी नहीं है. तो ये क्या जेंटल पेरेंटिंग कराना चाहते हो यार? तुम खुद करो नहीं तो फिर. So for me that's the issue. Like the whole
No,
Google
I
culture,
think
bean bags and
my
massages.
view is this is I think a transitionary phase. Going back to I really enjoyed last time what Arjun said, right? वो this is hopeless वाला situation ना. Actually culture setting में वो बहुत होता है. As
हाँ.
CEOs, I'm sure we keep thinking because yeah, this is a very hard problem to design. Like PNG is 150 years old. Unilever will be 100 years old as a
One
business.
more, yeah. PNG is only
Yeah.
200 years old. 180
So,
or 90 years old.
if you are in whatever year 5, year 6, year 9, 10 of our business, I mean, over the next 10 years, we'll have to set a culture, right? I think there are people who have figured this out, if you ask me. And I think you should always get external professional help for this. Like I think when I got leadership coaching for myself, it just built a little bit more self-awareness. Then I got it for 3 of my leaders. They say it didn't help, but I can clearly see the difference. वो थोड़ा denial तो रहता ही है सबको, okay? So now yeah, again, see, there are three stages, right? There is awareness, acceptance, and
अभी वो
action.
disbelief stage पे है वो भी.
हाँ, but action नहीं कर रहे कुछ वो, ठीक है? Acceptance भी बहुत hard हो रही है उनको, but at least awareness आ गई है कि they are like हाँ अभी समझ गया दिक्कत क्या है, accept नहीं करना चाहते, but ठीक है यार, at least phase 1 तो पहुंचा, awareness तो पहुंचा, उसके बाद acceptance आएगा, फिर कभी ना कभी action आएगा करके. But I have now gone ahead and put 10 people in the management under a different leadership coaching program. And I am realizing धीरे ना, I think we are ineffective as leaders because of proximity. Like Chirag will relate to this, but after years and years of marriage ना, मैं यही सबसे common advice देता हूँ मैं. Half the time my wife is like, तू सुन ही नहीं रहा मैं क्या बोल रहा हूँ, right? वो हो जाता है, right? Because you just every day you're talking, you get used to it. So then the value of your words reduces, right? It's just human behavior. It's how the mind works. You can't, I mean, active listening, fully being present in the moment is very hard, right? So a lot of things just become like, कि हाँ यार बोला था करके, but I didn't think about it twice. Happens with us also when teams tell us we are a little not fully listening sometimes to their cries of help because they are coming in different forms. Happens with them also because you're like, ये तो यार 5 साल से यही चीज बोल रहा है करके, तो अब मैं I'm not going to listen. So you need a little change in environment. And I have realized a small change in environment yields the same words to have a very different impact. So I would urge you guys to think about it. Like at least मुझे तो काफी, I see a lot of movement finally on people having higher awareness and building acceptance faster with external help versus me telling them. At least मुझे तो clearly दिख रहा है. Actually, SD, you know this, यार. In the first 2 years or 3 years when I was on the board, why would you ask me to give a message?
Always. घर की मुर्गी दाल बराबर. It's very clear, no?
Yeah.
It comes much louder from an external person. Much louder.
Yeah.
Especially on the board, there's that. You hear it once in a while. I'll be giving 20 instructions a day. This will be the 21st. You'll be giving one feedback a month from a position of a board member. It just speaks louder.
But both of you,
थोड़ा power
how
equation भी है ना?
comfortable people have been to, let's say, outsider coaching, etc., or that has been well accepted कि नहीं है?
Very accepted. See, the coach also has to earn their right. Coach cannot, like, if Revant did not know performance marketing and was just randomly coming and shooting the breeze, they would, after a while, smart people realize that there is, but he was very sharp. I think 2 things. One is if, for example, Toshan works with Deepak on and off on communication, managing board meeting, etc. Toshan is an expert on this. So Deepak learns 5 things in every conversation. Second is Deepak also knows that my level of respect for Toshan is very, very high. So he knows that, okay, Toshan has the founder's ear and respect. So there is something there. He's an investor for many years. Plus, by the way, every time I learn something. So now the weight of the feedback, the weight of the coaching, the importance of preparing for let's say a 1 hour chat with him, Deepak does a lot. But if these are not the cases, then it would just like some paid executive coach who, the organization has paid that person for a mandate of 15 people. And kabhi hai, kabhi nahi hai, etc. Then it becomes a little tricky. वो है.
मतलब what I'm doing right now is that,
Openness
Shantanu, but
has to
उसमें
come.
there's a
In both your
process.
cases, sorry, but openness comes from the people itself, that they realize that, okay, there is some problem. But Revant, you were saying that you had to instill that awareness. That first step was to actually.
यार अल्फाज में तो बहुत हार्ड होता है. अल्फाज आर दे आर ऑलवेज इन डिनायल, दे आर ऑलवेज डिफेंसिव की बिकॉज दे प्रोजेक्ट द प्रॉब्लम आउटवर्ड कि ऑर्ग में प्रॉब्लम है. लाइक फॉर एग्जांपल ऑल ऑफ माय लीडरशिप ब्लेम्स मी फॉर एवरीथिंग कि रेवंत में प्रॉब्लम है करके. आई एम लाइक ठीक है, मेरे में प्रॉब्लम, ठीक है, आई विल ट्राई टू फिक्स वॉट एवर देयर इज, बट इज देयर समथिंग यू नीड टू फिक्स? इट्स जस्ट अ वेरी ऑब्जेक्टिव क्वेश्चन टू आस्क, राइट? वन ऑफ द प्लेसेस, शांतनु, वेयर आई हैव लर्न नॉट टू बी इमोशनल. मैंने कोई दिक्कत, मैं गलत हूं, मैं सॉल्व करूंगा, आप बताओ आप और क्या करना चाहते हो. लाइक लेट्स अज्यूम आई सॉल्व दिस, विल एवरीथिंग गेट सॉल्व्ड? देन द रियल इंट्रोस्पेक्शन हैज टू हैपन, राइट? एंड उसमें दे फाइंड इट वेरी हार्ड बिकॉज again, as I said, my feedback will be taken with a defensiveness. So it's almost like, I'll tell you, it's very eerie. My board members, when they tell me something, in the first 4-5, before I took leadership coaching, I used to be defensive. Only after I took leadership coaching did I start seeing it objectively and double clicking and saying, यार मैं defensive नहीं होऊंगा, आप मेरे benefit के लिए बोल रहे हो, right? Because the leadership coach gave me a very simple word: all feedback is helpful. Whether you want to act on it or not is your choice, but you should always take it and objectively distill it and say, अब इसमें को act करना है कि नहीं करके, but objective रहो उसमें, right? उसके बाद तो मतलब I don't mind it. In fact, you would know this, right? So Chirag interviewed my new chief of staff, Shantanu. What I loved is he went to my board members and said, I'm going to be chief of staff to this guy. Before I take up the role, I want to know whose chief of staff I'm going to be, what are his strengths, what are his weaknesses. They were far more objective and brutal to him than to me because they knew that मेरे को बोलेगा तो मैं बुरा मान जाऊंगा करके. तो वहां से आया फिर कुछ फीडबैक मेरे को, नहीं यार बहुत बढ़िया है, चलो. So even and again, I hope you don't mind me saying this, Chirag. So I have gone to Chirag's board member and taken feedback about Chirag, and they have given me a very different articulation because it's easier for them to do it. And I'm like, आप मुझे बताओ, मैं बात करूंगा उससे करके, right? Because they fear that relationship will get affected. Like अगर मैं तेरे को कुछ बोल दूंगा तो बुरा मान जाएगा तू, right? और मानते हैं लोग बुरा यार, it's by design. मतलब everyone feels it's not easy to hear things that is bitter truth, right? So I have realized that the world has trained us to be very careful of giving the brutal truth, and that actually disallows you to improve faster. And for me, the shock was I am anything but not the bitter truth. But now I think वो इतना प्ले आउट हो गया कि लोग इस लाइक कि रेवंत तो पूरे टाइम क्रिबी करता रहता है कि यार ये 3 चीज सुधारनी है, ये 3 चीज सुधारनी है, तो ये तो कभी अंत ही नहीं है करके. बट इट्स फॉर एवरीबॉडीज बेनिफिट, राइट? आई मीन पीपल कैन टेक इट एंड improve, or they can be who they are. But my always reverse ask is, everyone comes to me and says we want to be better, then I'll tell you how to be better, right? But I realize it doesn't help long term because people say it, they don't actually mean it. Because if you meant it, then you will actually think long and hard about every feedback, write down, double click, triple click, go deeper, say how do I solve it, versus just leave it at that and say मैं कर लूंगा, figure out. Sorry, you had a question.
No, absolutely. No, I'm saying for founders, it's actually easier because the entire alignment of incentive is for the growth of the company, right? So if there is something that comes to the founder which they may not like, let's say feedback about behavior, or तू बहुत podcast कर रहा है, you're getting distracted, or your feedback to your employees is, let's say, lacks empathy, whatever. These are all things that could offend someone. For example, like all of us probably get it directly, indirectly, etc. But if we act on it, does the company become better? Do we become more effective as founders? The answer is yes. And given our financial incentives are so aligned to the company becoming better, it far outweighs any risk of being offended at all, at least after a certain maturity level, right? So that's why it's much easier to give founders advice or feedback than what most people imagine it to be. Because our incentives are locked into us acting on that feedback if it's coming from a smart source.
Yeah, but don't you think, Shantanu, even for senior teams, while in our case, financial incentives are like extremely on one side, but in today's case, at least for senior teams, also they are part shareholders.
Yes.
And starting to, like, whenever I ask this question now, okay, let's say when an argument is happening, and if I ask people that, okay, you are a shareholder in GoKwik, would you have the same answer? I think people.
But the other issue, with you and a senior person is dispensability. Chirag. Founder is indispensable for the most part. Senior team members, when they get feedback, there are existential questions also. Ki, oh, does this mean that I will not get promoted? Does this mean I will be irrelevant tomorrow?
Yeah, there's a deeper problem that people don't internalize. It's they don't look at what we need to do versus ये हमारे साथ भी होता है वैसे. Like initially in the first 2-3 years now, when let's say a shareholder would give me feedback, I would crib to Chirag, right? कि यार ये investor समझते ही नहीं है. हमारा क्या दुख रहा होता है, हम 16 घंटा मरा रहे, back pain. Like this was before my spinal surgery also, right? Like half the time I am bedridden and trying to figure company कैसे चलाते हैं and do 0 to 1. So it's easy to blame the external world. But again, there is another Brent Horowitz article only that really, really, really I send to everybody, right? Now the senior leadership also sent. It's called No One Cares. So, and I think over time that I think I like the word used. It's maturity. Even founders need to mature. कि यार तुम्हारा काम है यार, तुम ही घुसे हो, इन्वेस्टर तुम ही लेके आए हो. अब गुड और बैड कि कोई ना कोई सबका अपना अपना तरीका होता है. Just do your job, right? मतलब instead of worrying about what the world thinks about you, just focus on things that are in your control. Do the best, improve if possible, do better, and I'm sure tomorrow, you will feel that at least okay, it was not as bad as we thought, right? And this just has to keep continuing, right? And I think it's a question of reducing insecurity. I take your point. Founders are lesser insecure, or at least as CEOs, because we technically get a 5-year term, right? Even if now we are broadly like professional CEOs, we know we have broadly a 5-year term, right? Like now, let's take Piyush Bansal, right? Lenskart going public. He has an employee agreement now that he's CEO for 5 years, MD and CEO for 5 years. At the end of 5 years, if things are not great, the board may decide that we need some other CEO. But he has a 5-year plan. Whereas I don't think employees have 5-year contracts. They do have 4-year ESOP vesting. So broadly, there is an alignment, that unsaid implicit arrangement that we feel that every time we give more ESOP, which is 4-year vesting, we know that और 4 साल आगे तो सोच रहा है करके. But I think it's very implicit. It's not very explicit. Maybe that helps. Maybe with senior leadership, Chirag, we should try that, right? कि do a 5-year contract. कि यार ये 5 साल का employee contract है. This is how things will flow. नहीं क्या? शांतनु like नहीं बिल्कुल नहीं.
The hiring process are never perfect.
The way our boards function now, they have very clearly said that this is where you should get us involved. This is what the SHA says. I think that kind of at least code of conduct or a written document is not there. What ends up happening is we are there daily, whereas our board is meeting us, let's say, once a month, once in 3 months. So, there is this implicit understanding कि भाई मतलब one, of course, you are a founder, 2 crib करने मत आओ, मतलब that's not the forum. Because मेरे को तो लगता है because we are in office daily and then we are visible, चलो यार, and then there is someone. I'm sure that if we also meet our board daily ना तो कुछ ना कुछ crib भी कर लेंगे फिर.
100%.
That's all
बात क्या
proximity
करेंगे?
argument,
कितना
ना?
business का बना? हाँ, proximity argument. You're right.
When you are at that stage where out of 4 weeks you should 1 week at least not go to office. Shantanu disagrees.
Shantanu तो agrees. Shantanu is like मैं office जाते ही नहीं हूँ.
Shantanu also sensing, or did it get discussed in the board meeting, that there is general more optimism around India growth, etc., especially in online businesses?
Honestly, I still think it's just a shift of behavior from online to offline. My belief still is that we are just seeing the real, offline to online.
You are right, yeah. I was meeting someone who has been running offline retail for a while, legacy business. He has been saying, yeah, offline retail is struggling.
And look at
Cash
the base
flow
effect,
cycles
right?
are mismatched.
Correct. So think about Unilever plus P&G plus Marico and all of these guys who do about $20 billion put together, everybody, right? Consumer durables, consumer apparel, consumer ये सब ले ले तू. So your online index is all of these, right? Fashion, beauty, health and wellness, some durables and stuff like that. So जो $20 billion है, जो 10% पे grow कर रहा था. So they were adding $2 billion a year in revenue, has come down to, let's say, 5%. But that $1 billion has just moved to online, which is why, but for online brands, when you add 100 crore every year, it's like, oh my God, तुमने 100 crore add कर दिया. But net, we seem to be adding that billion and a half to online brands. So that's my broad read.
But Revant, then why isn't, let's say, e-commerce guidance increasing? I still hear the $70-80 billion India e-commerce market. I think that should be
बीच में Amazon slow हो गया था ना, Amazon Flipkart slow हो गया था. And now if you see Prime Pay, Amazon has released better than expected numbers that Harish shared with us. Flipkart tells me their growth is back. Amazon and Flipkart were largely the index for India e-commerce, right? So if you see FY24 and 25 results, their growth slowed down significantly. Now, Amazon and Flipkart are both saying that growth is back. Now, why is it back? They can only answer. But Meesho continues to grow. Quick Com is growing. my belief is that renewed push now of just online behavior compounding is just kicking in. So I think you will start seeing a re-rating because जो Prime Day announce किया, Prime Day के results announce किए हैं Amazon ने काफी अच्छे, better than expected है. The interesting thing, I'm sure you should talk to more brands, but while QuickCom is growing, we don't see the e-com slowing down. So D2C is growing, e-com is growing, and QuickCom is growing obviously faster than others. Broadly, just seems like spending shift your behavior. Like, see, it was still very early when we said that India will move online. And everyone kept saying कि अच्छा 8% ऑनलाइन 10% ऑनलाइन हो जाएगा बट इफ यू कंसिडर 18-20% ऑनलाइन हो जाएगा तो फिर बहुत बड़ा टैम एक्सपेंशन हो रहा है नो दैट्स ऑल दैट इज हैपनिंग आई थिंक इट्स जस्ट the numbers are getting more real that in $1 trillion
I was generally
ठीक है
curious that I'm not hearing at least these red shares etc. say $100 billion market हो गया है.
I think it lag effect होता है वो we see the numbers first
We
like
keep
every
saying
research
कि
company
हो
looks at all
जाएगा
the numbers
2028 में but then we should be 100 plus.
my view is FY26 or CY25, whatever numbers Amazon or Flipkart and Meesho announce, ideally with that people will start going deeper and saying कि यार QuickCom अगर इतना बड़ा हो रहा है और Amazon, Flipkart भी slow down नहीं हो रहे हैं, वो भी बड़े हो रहे हैं, Meesho भी बड़ा हो रहा है. So 3 large e-com platforms. I don't think Nykaa is slowing. They are still giving 20% year-on-year growth guidance.
अब तो grow हो रहा है.
ठीक तो है सब. I just think it's just shifting. And that's where I think the real results will be if you look at why has Reliance Retail ka IPO stalled because the numbers are not great, right? And I think offline retail is struggling more than they are accepting.
Even like for example, offline also, like Lahori Jeera, for example, is a fantastic offline story.
नहीं, but sorry, दो हम अलग चीज mix कर रहे हैं हम शांतनु. I think there will be brands that will be created offline. Chirag's point was because he looks at the index of all D2C companies, right? Apart from a few enterprises that he works with, most of the D2C companies in the country work with him. What is surprising him is that if the market, like, is the market growing or is, and has to be, because how can D2C brands continue to grow and increase margin? Because that's what broadly people are saying, that हमारा margin stable है और हम grow कर रहे हैं या margin भी improve हो रहा है और grow भी कर रहे हैं. That can only happen when the market is growing.
Yes.
Right? So his ask is, why is there no data point from a Red Seer or somebody saying that the e-com market now has to be re-rated? If we thought FY28 it will become $60 billion, maybe that needs to be re-rated to $75 billion.
Yeah.
Like who's tracking this? And my limited point is, I think people get there a little late. वो उनको time लगता है to index across multiple companies, and for everyone today it's just easy to look at Amazon, Flipkart data because that was 50-60% of or 70% of e-com as per everybody. So they're like वो 70% अगर grow करेगा then हम re-rate करेंगे. वो grow नहीं कर रहा था पहले. At least last 2 साल they had given very muted guidance. I think they'll revise their guidance now.
Got it.
Amazon Prime had some great numbers this time, at least what I read.
Now 3x तो हो गया है, मतलब category size have increased.
And interestingly,
But अभी
I'm seeing a
fast.
lot of these new signups coming from tier 2, tier 3 cities
Was it?
everywhere. Yeah.
Interesting. यही तो है.
I was there with
Okay.
nutrition brand yesterday. I think they were saying tier 2, tier 3 massive traction.
No, nutrition में तो मतलब I think democratized access है अभी तो.
हर जगह है ना शांतनु. Everything is democratized access. If you think about
वहाँ पर
Meesho,
actually में true supply constraint है. The same fashion is not available in a tier 2, tier 3. वहाँ तो मॉल ही नहीं है. हमारे गुड़गांव में तो of course we can step into a mall and figure out that Onitsuka shoes वहाँ तो है ही नहीं. And there are these
Yeah.
interesting sneakers in
I mean, yeah.
like a trend.
And democratized, yeah. I think democratized access in terms of also like it's meaningful to them. Like because what of the content they're getting and access to content, they're also like a lot more aware on let's say nutrition and protein and gym and this and that. So I'm fairly certain if you look at gym equipment sales also would have increased in the last 2-3 years in tier 2, tier 3 is my hypothesis.
By the way, did you read that data? I was firstly in disbelief that India has more Instagram users than WhatsApp.
Are you serious?
Yeah, it's verified now.
That is crazy.
That's absolutely.
That is crazy. Is it because older people are coming on Instagram or is it that younger people are not on WhatsApp anymore?
Younger people tend to use Instagram also as a communication channel.
Yes.
One. Two,
A lot of young people are not on WhatsApp apparently.
India does not have TikTok, so that share is also with Insta. That was at least what was told. So Insta is going to be, if we have been using Insta, I think Insta DMs, etc., will become even more powerful over time. Which was quite crazy for, overall funnel ऐसे चलता है ना कि let's say social media users, then you have UPI users, and then you have Instagram, WhatsApp, then Instagram, and then commerce shoppers. But this has defied the trend.
क्या नंबर बोल रहे हैं Instagram 750 क्या?
I heard 600, close to 600.
नहीं ज्यादा होगा. WhatsApp users तो 700
WhatsApp was
million cross है.
500 was At least they didn't say the number. They said Instagram is higher, which is
काफी insane.
quite fascinating.
यार ये entertainment is seriously becoming like, in the end, Insta is entertainment. Na? Even YouTube, by the way, YouTube now claims 700 million plus, Chirag. Like they're saying 750. Very interestingly, I don't know where they get this data, but they did some research where some 44% people said who watch YouTube shorts that we don't watch Instagram reels. पता नहीं कौन हाँ ऐसे कुछ तो data point दिया उन्होंने 44% of people who watch YouTube shorts don't watch Insta reels.
Asymmetric is not that large.
So
आशीष feedback दे रहा है बड़ा.
I took a little bit of a dipstick, and at least people believe that they would have spoken to. So there's a lot of Varnak content on YouTube. So YouTube algo is designed very, I mean, of course, even the Insta algo is, but the supply of vernacular content, like Tamil content for Tamilians, Mallu content for people who, like, not just region, but people who have a very high affinity. YouTube was always designed as a content hub. So the content creation was very, very deep around regional languages as well. And the consumption of regional language content on YouTube is very high compared to Instagram. So while Shantanu, you are seeing a very good traction in your Marathi reels, I think that will play out in Insta also.
Marathi reels are on Insta only. That's not on YouTube yet.
I know. I'm just saying that YouTube has played this game before as a platform. The creators were very, very, very deep on saying, yeah, this is who I am. And they got massive love for that. So there are people with 10 million, 20 million followers who do only Varnak content. And छोटे नहीं है वो लोग. मतलब ऐसे बहुत सारे हैं, right? So the depth of regional content, we can call it, Varnak maybe is a wrong word, very, very specific regional content is much higher as supply on YouTube, which allows maybe these people who watch shorts in that regional content to not watch Insta Reels because they don't relate much to that. So maybe that's the other thing playing out. Like I was talking to Hitesh, so he was saying कि यार श्रावण आ गया तो because he sells only chicken masalas, he's like बहुत धंधे की लग गई है करके, मतलब श्रावण है तो चिकन लोग कम खा रहे तो मसाला नहीं ऑर्डर. ऐसे ठीक है, let's take this time to experiment. And I was exactly in this session of YouTube and I just called him and said, why don't you try some? And तभी तूने भी भेजा था मेरे को कि ये मराठी रील बहुत बढ़िया चल रहा है. So I told Hitesh कि एक काम कर, why don't you, अभी भी चिकन कौन खा रहा है? like बंगाली खा रहे हैं, महाराष्ट्रियंस खा रहे हैं, नॉर्थ इंडियन्स कम खा रहे हैं करके. बिकॉज वो श्रावण का बहुत बोल रहा था कि नहीं खाना नहीं खाना है, साउथ इंडियन खा रहे हैं. तो एक काम कर, एक बंगाली रील कर विद अ बंगाली इन्फ्लुएंसर, मल्लू कर, एक महाराष्ट्रियन कर. एंड टुडे ओनली ही पिन से यार तीनों में एकदम बढ़िया एंगेजमेंट है, सही चल रहा है. ड्यूरिंग श्रावण ऑल्सो बढ़िया उसमें वो आ रहा है. एंड यही करना है ना फिर, मतलब बेसिकली चिकन तो सब खाते हैं बट सबके अलग डिशेस है. लाइक फॉर एग्जांपल ही हैज, व्हाई इज ही शोइंग ओनली अ ग्रिल्ड चिकन टिक्का? नाउ ही हैज टू इमेजिन व्हाट इंडिया ईट्स इन चिकन, एंड एवरी like it's such a massive expansion possibility, right? Like every state or city or region has their own favorite 5 chicken dishes. He can have a masala for that and focus, and it's a very large time. मतलब 20-30 million लोग रहेंगे Insta पे for every one of those dishes.
The only push I will make to him is like focus. Like if you want to do Bengal, then like take 10 influencers, take 6 months and really crack that market. Then go to, if you have like a limited amount of money, which I'm assuming everyone kind of operates.
Yeah.
Even like Varnak works, now then figure out one market and then get a flywheel going, then quick commerce पे listing कराओ, फिर offline में थोड़ा, you know, kind of focused empty etc. Then move to Kerala. Then Kerala is a very good market like for these things. So
But
it's a very
I don't know,
concept.
मतलब करके ही पता लगेगा. I'm just saying कि थोड़ा वो evaluate करना पड़ेगा ऐसे, because इंडिया में ना actually we are, I am saying eerily, like I don't know if you guys remember this, but when we were in maybe MBA or maybe a little before that, there was this big legend around how Thumbs Up beat Coca-Cola in Telangana, Andhra, right? Because they created a very localized campaign around biryani के साथ Thumbs Up ही है करके types, and they like creamed the market share 70-80%, right? I am realizing with a 700 million Instagram depth and maybe it's YouTube and now with regional content, effectively you have to think of it like TV advertising कि हर state का तुम्हारा campaign अलग है, but वहाँ पैसा बहुत चाहिए उसके लिए.
तो selectively करना पड़ता है, absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I just got this data. IG 700 million you are saying, and average they are saying it's 36 minutes a day.
I put up a post yesterday which got a lot of ire from creators because I think अपने को लगता है कि financial inequity है कि if a lot of money is concentrated in the top 1%, I think with attention economy it's even worse. So क्या है, a lot of these young people have been told कि you have to wait for that one viral moment till you become like a creator earning lakhs of rupees through brand deals. ये नाचे गा रहे 300 view 400 view सालों साल dude, wasting life, then nothing is coming there. So there is that whole social issue, I think, and like I really hope, like you guys are young parents, that that the whole art of performance should be removed from this whole attention economy. तुम करो अपने लिए करो, but sense of self should not be attached to that.
But
India has
अपने लिए
10
कर रहे
crore
हैं वो लोग.
creators. नहीं, कौन बोल रहा है? कोई अपने लिए नहीं करता. सब लोगों को लग रहा है कि मैं एक दिन फेमस हो जाऊंगा और मेरे को पैसे मिलेंगे. के लिए कर रहे होते हैं, तो फिर
very
followers
hard
इतने
for
मिले
you
होते हैं.
very hard for you to dissuade them because the algorithm is addicted them now. It's a drug now.
Fully, यार.
It's a
वही
drug.
तो मैं बोल रहा हूँ. Financial inequity, that is a function of markets. This is a function of YouTube and Instagram algorithms, yeah.
This was my point to Arjun also, no? Ki, like, while they're doing well on live commerce on Douyin is technically going to win because you are a slave to the algorithm. Tomorrow the algorithm may switch off and then you'll be like, ki, bhai, ab kya kare? I think there is a limited point in time where you should use the algorithm to still amplify the message that you want to, but you don't have to change who you are. I think what is happening is people are confusing the long term. That there's no long term, for example, for maybe individuals because they don't know how to think long term. But for businesses, you have to leverage this point in time and say, yeah, long term, this is what I want to build. And this is a point in time where
Absolutely.
I can, like, for example, I was asking Hitesh for the 15th time in the last 1.5 साल कि अच्छा श्रावण है फिर नवरात्रि है तो वेज वाले मसाले लॉन्च कर दे. Why are you only a chicken masala or a non-veg masala company? He was like, Revant, अगली बार आप पूछोगे ना मैं फोन काट दूंगा. I will fuck to you if you tell me to order a veg masala bana. I am never going to be a veg masala company because we are a non-veg masala company. We are going to be loved only by non-vegetarians. I don't give a shit about vegetarians. They can order. They can try my tandoori and put it in paneer. I am okay. But I am not going to come out and make a masala that enjoy this paneer as such because the passion, going back to your original point of founders being passionate, his passion and purpose is around that, yeah, meat eaters should really enjoy their meals, right? Finally, at least the slight conviction has come on maybe egg. Like egg is still non-veg, right? Or at least it's close to non-veg. But coming back, he did agree to say, okay, let me think about how to leverage a channel like Instagram differently, but it will still not change my long-term brand purpose. I think it's very rare to find people who are long-term in their purpose and passion and are willing to navigate the short-term intricacies of how the markets change or channels change or the reality becomes different over a 3-4 year period, but still stick to your long-term messaging and brand strategy, which is from a business perspective. I to see that very few businesses only do this. Individuals से आप क्या ही expect कर रहे हो यार फिर Shantanu? Like there is no long-term plan that people have कि this is who I want to become. If they have that, then they can leverage the creator framework of saying that I'll get views on the reels to achieve that purpose. But अगर purpose ही clear नहीं है तो फिर तो then कचरे में ही dance करेंगे ना क्या करेंगे फिर वो मतलब because they are thinking views is the end game, but it's not the end game.
Yeah.